So, Bob, Andy, thanks for having us here.
You bet, Chris.
Surrounded by a bunch of wood. Some of it's been turned into guitars in some familiar shapes.
Yeah.
And celebrating 50 years. So it's pretty neat. We've got some kind of classics that have come back.
Yeah, somewhere earlier in the year we thought, what the heck, it's our 50-year anniversary, which made us feel like, well, that actually is a legitimate milestone.
Yeah.
Where we could look at some things that we used to do. And you know, we've never been a company that's trying to make yesterday's guitars. Seems like a good idea today, you know, at 50 years. So these are 5 examples of guitars that we made really throughout our history up until about, well, I'm going to say 10 years ago, something like that. Guitars started changing even more with Andy's design. But for those people that remember guitars from these days, we're making them again.
That's awesome. So
We
you
call
guys,
it the Legacy Series.
the Legacy series. So we've got an 810. Cooper, to your side, you've got
I got the 855, and then I got the 714 CE.
a cedar top on there. right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, cedar with rosewood.
And then
That's
the
a good
514
combination.
CE.
514
and 855.
Yeah, that one's an 815.
Oh,
12
815.
string.
Oh, that's right.
Or
55.
that's the 12-string version. This is the
855, 815. And we brought back the mustache bridge for those because it was a long time we made those models, but without the mustache bridge.
Yeah, that's a real classic design. Yeah, so it was the 855 mustache that was Neil Young was
Yeah.
playing. You're right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
First time I ever saw like some rock star
playing one of your
play a
Playing the
guitar
table.
in a movie, Rust Never Sleeps. It was like, yes.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So these are the classic designs. Walk us through them. So I mean, is this kind of the first? This is the prototypical Taylor, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the first. When we started our company, I mean, frankly, the good guitars that I knew at that point were Martin guitars. And I remember, I'll tell you that before I ever made my first guitar, I was playing guitars, and I used to watch the Johnny Cash show, and he played a black D35. I didn't know it was a Martin because I'd never heard of Martins. I didn't know it was a D35 because I'd never heard of Martins. But I would look at that guitar and I go, that's a good guitar. I could just kind of tell, and I just grooved in on the nice sharp white binding, the black top. I think the back was probably not black, but I never saw the back of it. And so by the time I was making guitars, this style was something that I grew up on this style.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have a guitar that I made myself in 1975. So it's 49 years old today, and it's this guitar.
Kind of a classic combination.
Yeah.
Spruce, rosewood, dreadnought.
Spruce, rosewood,
White
mahogany
bound,
neck,
Yeah.
diamond
white bound.
inlays. Like, well, that's guitar, man.
Nice fine sharp lines. I still like that to right up till now.
Yeah, it's still one of your favorites. I mean, it's a favorite of ours. I'm glad to see it come back.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we've kind of missed a bit. So some changes, though. I noticed that in the sound hole, there's some volume controls, which is a little different. What's this got running in it?
So this is the Baggs Element, and we used Baggs pickups in the early days. Do you remember when they used to have a brass face and a
Yes.
piece of phenolic glued on top
Yeah,
of
the
it?
LB6.
Yeah, and then it had kind of the brass control that's in the sound hole.
Yeah, we never had the control on that. We were using a Baggs pickup and a Bartolini preamp. In fact, my Bill
kind of tall
Bartolini
knobs.
made that preamp for
Yeah.
us. And mine has got 2 holes there where there used to be those preamps. But this is an elegant solution. And, you know, I will say that everybody's pickups have really come a long ways. Larry Fishman stopped by the other day to show us what he's up to. And it's like, Larry, I got to hand it to you. Those things sound good, you know. It used to be, I would turn on the television and all guitars on TV sounded like a duck, you know, like a
Quack,
kazoo.
yeah.
But now they all sound good.
Yeah, a lot of work to get rid of the quack.
So, outside of the Dread, we got the 2 jumbos. Now, since we've been sort of rolling on the grand orchestra train for a bit, can y'all talk a little bit about what separates these jumbos from kind of the 800 series, like 818 or something, you know, with the lines of the body and all that.
Yeah, so, well, the jumbo, if you look at those jumbo curves, if you go back in guitar history ways, it's actually more of an archtop guitar kind of lineage.
Made flat top.
Yeah. So let's say you go a long ways back and you talk about some of Gibson's history. You go back to like that Ray Whitley, what they call the Super Jumbo 200, that early version. You go, man, they were taking like an L5 advanced at the time they called it. It was a 17-inch L5 kind of archtop guitar shape, built into a flat top guitar. Man, that's part of our guitar playing community. That's a shape. That's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different kind of sound than a dreadnought sort of a guitar or a slope shoulder or any of those. So yeah, these were totally. I think when you started, it was basically dreadnought or jumbo. Those were
Dreadnought or jumbo, and the guitars that I
ideas to play with.
and they were Sam Ratting's shapes. Sam was the owner of American Dream, and the guy that after I made my first 3 guitars just on my own in high school, I started working at American Dream. I learned chops from Sam. He was a good craftsman. The guitars were crude shaped. If you look at my dreadnought from 75, it's more square than this. And our jumbo was a little more squared, on the shoulders.
Like kind of the gildish flavor.
Yeah, it was, I think the shapes he drew, he had gills in mind when he did that. So that's what I inherited. That's what we started out with. When I was 19, I had actually inherited somebody else's ideas of guitars, which was Sam Ratting.
Sure. So when did the grand concert kind of come along in that?
In early 80s, this player that we know, Chris Proctor, who was a fingerstyle champion at Winfield. We met him at NAMM shows. We became friends with him. And he's just like, hey, I need a smaller guitar, one that has a more articulated sound, easier to carry. I don't need a big boomy sound because I have pickups on my guitars, and we probably put, I don't know how many pickups over the years. We put in his and Dan Crairy's guitars and Harvey Reid's guitars, trying to find the way to Nirvana, you know. And he goes, but I want a wide neck. I need a wide neck, not as wide as a classical. So we designed that guitar for Chris, the grand concert, with a 1 7/8 inch wide 6-string neck and ultralight strings on, like 11s and 10s down here. He played very precise, and he's still around today. I saw him just a couple months ago. It was really fun to see him. He lives in Utah, but that's where that guitar came in. And that guitar, if Kurt was here, he would tell you the year because he remembers years, but I don't.
Gotcha.
But it was mid 80s.
So, since we're not talking years,
84.
84.
Yeah.
was
Andy knows.
remembers.
was Grand Auditorium 94?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
it
kind
was
of like
20
it's,
years.
It was basically every
Yeah.
10 years and introduced usually right around an anniversary.
yeah.
And so Grand Concert came in, Grand Auditorium came in, kind of on,
So we love cedar tops.
as do I.
Yeah. I mean, last year we had a couple cedar tops that we did with you that just blew our minds. But were these both originally cedar top guitars?
Yes. And if you hand me that guitar there, Andy, the 514. So this was the second year. This was introduced as a 20th anniversary, and we made 500 guitars that year. 250 were rosewood and spruce, 250 were mahogany and cedar. They had no cutaway in it. And that's when we introduced this shape. This shape came about because dealers were starting to ask for a guitar that was the size of a dreadnought, but not a dreadnought. If I put this face to face with this guitar, you'll see the bout it's the same length, it's the same overall width. This is a little bit narrower here. But give us something a little more curvy, maybe a little bit different sound, not quite as big and bold of a sound. And
Can I
then,
demonstrate this for a minute?
yeah,
Part of what made this guitar a thing is you could do this. You'll hear it on thousands of recordings.
while he strums, I'll tell a story.
That sounds good. It's like a kid by a campfire.
Yeah,
Right? Isn't that
This-
what this was for?
this guy, this was the first year this guitar came out. I was in Nashville. We had a little booth. There was some cat sitting in it on a stool doing what Andy's doing. And I'm walking by and he looks up and he goes, "Y'all Bob Taylor?" And I go, "That's me." And he goes, "I love this guitar. Thank you for making this guitar." And I go, "Yeah, want to tell me why?" He goes, "I'll be happy to." He goes, "I'm a studio cat here in Nashville, and I do this." He's strumming while he's talking. "I do this 8 hours a day, and this does that better than any guitar I ever owned." And I thought, that's good enough for me.
That was totally it.
And you know what? How many Taylor guitar customers do that
Yeah.
for their musical living? You know what I mean? At home.
Yeah,
That's how I
at
find it.
home, at church, in the studio, on stage. Like, yeah, that's what that guitar does, man.
Did you have any inkling when you created the GA body that it would become as popular?
No, I didn't realize that it would become maybe like a new American standard that got heavily copied. And when we made the cutaway version of it, I mean, I can go to a trade show in China, or even at NAMM. It used to be.
Yeah, there's-
I'd go around the corner and go, "Oh, I didn't know this company that sells whatever borrowed one of our guitars." Oh, that's not one of our guitars. You know, the Martin Dreadnought is the most copied shape there ever was. I think this is the second most copied.
I agree. I remember
Everybody's got their version.
it was probably around 10 years ago. I just started seeing very, very clear GA kind of bodies popping up everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And Larry Breedlove was with us then. And since we're talking about legacy, so a few little historical stories I think are kind of fun. But Larry'd been with us for a long time. He went away, started Breedlove, came back, finished his career with Taylor. But Larry did most of the actual drawing. If I said to Andy, "What was Larry's greatest strength?" He can draw a curve. That's what Andy will say every time, you know. And Larry and I had a super great relationship because I would be doing stuff and I had in mind what I'd want to do. And Larry and I would talk about, he'd work on the curves and I'd look, "Yeah, what do you think about that?" We had a very non-confrontive relationship. He could give his opinion, I could give mine in a non-critical, nobody got their feelings hurt. And so we ended up with this shape. It was beautiful. The first one we made was for Kathy Mattea. It was a custom guitar. She was looking for something. Kurt had been talking to her, or maybe TJ, and said, "Well, Bob's working on something," and we made that guitar for her. It was a custom guitar. And then we made a second one, which we painted black, which she called Blackie, and she played it all the time. She lost it in the Nashville flood. And we got Blackie back to see if we could fix it. And we'd fixed some guitars, but
That one was
Too far gone.
Black was like the Wicked Witch of the West. She was most assuredly dead.
Did y'all do a run of those? Like
Blackies?
Kathy Mattea?
Yes, we did a Kathy
Yeah.
Mattea model.
I thought so.
We did, and it was black, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was,
memory.
I remember that. I remember working on a couple of them.
Yeah.
That was in my pre-Taylor days, but I remember seeing them.
Andy worked on our guitars before he worked here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seen.
What was that like, prior to Taylor having the exposure? Of course, growing up in this area, now, we're talking legacy. You're part of this legacy, but you were on the outside and now you're on the inside. And, how's that? How have you navigated that?
I feel rich because of it. Actually, I feel rich because of it, because I got to bring in a whole background of experience with everyone else's guitars. Guitar makers that I consider friends, guitar makers who I've never got to meet, guitars from different eras that were long before I was ever around, guitars from different centuries. I got to enjoy all of that and go, man, as a guitar playing community, here's where our legacy is. It's with this and this development and then this maker came in. It's like every maker is like a musician throwing their individual thoughts, their hopes, their dreams all into this community pool. And the musicians get to kind of swim in that pool. And we look at it and go, I got to make a contribution. That was amazing. And so, yeah, I got to enjoy this kind of a career of working on instruments, building my own instruments, repairing or restoring whatever. I'm going, okay, I understand. Like, I understand that as an A10. And the first time I worked on one, I knew Bob a little better. I hadn't met him, but I knew more about him by looking at what it was he made. Same thing with Bill Collins, same thing with Richard Hoover, Dana Bourgeois, or all these other guys. You go, well, I got to work on your guitar first, and then later in life when I met you, or we became friends, go, oh yeah, this makes sense. Knowing you now, I know why you built this way. This fits the way that you see life, right? And so coming into it, going, okay, well, here's the thing, here's where it comes from, here's how it continued to develop. You can see what makes it valuable, what makes it important, what makes you appreciate about it, and where you might want to go with it next. Like earlier today, we were talking about guitars being a product of the choices you make. It's very much that way. So if you're going to start with something, go, okay, what kind of mood am I in? What sort of sound do I want to make? What kind of look do I want to make? Who do I want this guitar to serve? What kind of music do I want to hear coming out of it? Let's make some design decisions. Should this be a big one? Is it going to be a small one? Am I going to attach the neck this way, or this way? What should we make it sound like? Well, saying yes to one thing means that you're going to say no to some other things. That's a deliberate choice that you could make as a builder, right? And then you make all those little decisions, and you end up with something that hopefully is a coherent, cohesive thought by the time it's done. It's kind of like something, it reminds me of something Bob said years ago. He goes, man, you can have anything you want in life. You just can't have everything.
Wise words.
Yeah,
that is
life's a series of trades.
absolutely
You trade one
it.
thing for another.
It's like
Yeah.
for years we've played this game that I call Would You Rather. I go, it starts something like this. Well, we might be talking about something like this. Maybe we're on the horns of a dilemma, or we're trying to decide, okay, where do we want to go with this? Okay, would you rather choice A or choice B? If you choose this, that means you can't have this. If you choose that, you can't have this. Tomorrow I might make a different decision because we've got something different we're weighing up. But today, what would you rather? What do you want life to be like? What do you want to make? What do you want to sound like? What do you want to feel?
It's an interesting concept, thinking about how what someone has created can inform you on who they are. And talking about legacy and thinking back, you made a decision at some point to just bolt the neck on a guitar when everyone said it was the wrong thing to do. That seems to be pretty formative of who Bob Taylor is. And we kind of walked around here before we were shooting, and you really educated us on the process of building guitar, starting off with the wood drying. And we live on the internet doing YouTube videos, and we talk with people all the time. And I think there's a lack of appreciation on everything that goes into it. But over 50 years, just through experience, trial and error, and making those choices that you just articulated, Andy, it's probably too immense to articulate, but like, how much education did you have just during those first 20, 30 years up to now?
Oh, the fire hose of it. And I would say if there's one trait that I have that I rely on is being pragmatic. If something's working, I want a little bit more of that. And if something's not, I want less of that. And then the other thing is change the rules. We are all completely, I read as a pretty conservative person, someone looks at me and it's like, hey, pretty conservative, not wild. He doesn't even have a necklace, or an earring or anything. I'm a conservative dude. I don't have a tattoo. But I don't mind changing the rules all the time. Change the rules. Who made the rule that a guitar has to go on there with a dovetail joint?
Yeah.
Who made that rule? As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you that there was no talk about a dovetail joint being a good joint until I made a bolt-on neck. I guarantee you're not going to... I haven't looked at every catalog that was ever made before I came along, but the ones I looked at, they don't even mention the neck attachment. But once there was another one, all of a sudden that one became the only way to do it. The old one was the best, and it's, sonically perfect, and it's the only way you could do it. So if there's no choice, you can't even have the conversation. So in that regard there, how I dry wood, we spent a lot of time. I don't dry wood the way other people do it. I dry wood. I changed a lot of the rules on that. And it's really interesting because I recently had hired a consultant, a PhD in wood processing from Belgium. And he came out here and he looked through and I showed him how to do it. And he's like, Bob, you're the only guy who's ever dried wood that understands it, how it should be understood, right? And so I thought, oh, the scientist told me that. Wow. But I think being pragmatic in guitar building has great utility, especially if you want to build guitars in a factory, make good guitars, focus on the things that most people agree on. Do you know what they don't agree on? Sound. If I make this guitar to sound, if there's 50 people in here and say, who thinks this is a great sounding guitar? And half of them put their hand up. And I go, if I change this to where you put your hand up, your hand's going to come down. Yeah, it's going to be,
Sure.
or maybe all of them sort of don't like it, But I think that for me to realize that at an early age.
Once you're in the ballpark of good, once you're in the ballpark of good, you're like, okay, well now we can talk about subtleties. But you got to get, like, there are plenty of guitars that I've seen, that I've played, that I've worked on, where you go, this isn't a good sound because this isn't musically that useful. This doesn't work good for playing songs, right? So in a way, there's a pragmatic
Just got to get in the ballpark.
There's a reality to go, look, you got to get to here, and then it could be a musical instrument.
And it's nuanced.
And then we can talk about, would you like that tone or that tone? Fine. But if I can't actually play songs with it, if the sounds that are coming out of this box aren't that good to begin with, it's not good. That's not good. I think we can agree on that.
I totally agree with that. But I got common agreement on, were they easy to play? Nobody doesn't like a guitar that's easy to play.
Right.
And then I sold to dealers. Did they come in good condition, ready to sell, or did they have to be worked on? And those are two things that I really worked on, during my building this company.
Yeah, I think that's what is crazy, because today we've spent time with both of you, and just in here before getting the knowledge about the drying process, being in Andy's shop and hearing about just every step that you took on, say, the Powers Electric, everything thought out. And I know that it's like that with every single guitar that y'all release. There's so much thought put into it, and then when it reaches the customer, it's just so accessible to them that they don't even probably realize how well thought out everything is. It just plays easy and it sounds good and it's easy to take care of. But it's nice to see kind of this progression, and then through the other 50th anniversary stuff that we've seen this year, there's builders editions and GS minis. It's kind of a sampling of everything people know Taylor by now. And I think these are kind of the final little missing piece of the historical kind of narrative of this year. But yeah, it's wild to see every single one of these, they're easy to play and they sound good,
I appreciate that. I'm sure Bob does as well. But if I could say something that's a little more like personal philosophy, if you had an opportunity to make something beautiful or choose to do your work well and do a good job of it, and you don't take that choice, what does that say about you as a person? I'm not even sure I want to sit next to you, And so there's a lot about what Bob has done and what you've got what you're holding in your hands there. You go, look, whether it was drying a piece of wood, whether it was designing something, if you have the opportunity to do a good job, you should take it. That's one of the things I admire so much about what Bob and Kurt have done, about what Taylor Guitars has become. There was a chance to do something good, and you took it. I think that's admirable.
I like that. And to add my pragmatic side to that whole thing, I realize some people don't like our stuff. And some people love our stuff, you know? This is what we make, we offer it. And if it helps you play music and you love it and you like it, fantastic. And if you don't, not exactly sure what to do because you're usually chasing a rainbow there.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like it's our job to put something that we're proud of in the marketplace. Sometimes we put some things in the marketplace that we weren't overly proud of. It's like, well, maybe, not too often because we've done a good job on things, but we make a good guitar. There was a time, I'm going to go back 30 years, maybe a little more, maybe about 30 years, when we would do these trade ads in Music Trades magazine at the NAMM show. They weren't consumer ads. They were ads to dealers at a trade show. And they were always a little more provocative than what we would put out, because those were in the days when you had a picture of a tree, double-page spread, out of all the trees in the forest, only a few get picked to play beautiful music. Come to think of it, that kind of works that way without people. A little Taylor Pickett poking up, no rock star, we've never done an ad with a celebrity endorsement, ever, in our whole career. But this ad was based off of a letter that I got. The guy wrote in and he said, I bought this guitar and there's these 3 things wrong with it. I want to know what you have to say about that. I go, let me tell you 12 more things that are wrong with it. And I wrote him back. I actually, it's like, I'm not happy with this and this is there, but barely, and this one's the hardest thing I've done. And I literally listed 12 things that were wrong with that guitar. And I said, the point is, the things that I'm proud about were right.
Yeah.
The things that don't matter as much, don't matter as much. And I often felt in my career that what I was trying to sell wasn't always what people were trying to buy. I was trying to sell a neck that you could reset. People don't think about that the day they buy a guitar. They only think about it when they need a reset.
Yeah.
I was trying, you know what I'm saying? So I go a guitar that's easy to work on and repair, because we know that my 810 is 50 years old. And it's going to be another 50 years old. You don't find these things like a couch on the curb on trash day. Here's a guitar poking out of a trash can. They never get thrown away. So I wanted them to last long. And I've never felt, I completely agree with Andy, which is not to say that every time we do something, we've achieved perfection.
No.
Not at all.
It's not an attainable thing, but it doesn't stop you from trying towards that goal.
Well, and I think that shines through because you made the comment repeatedly that there's not really a golden age. You're always trying to improve, which means that there's a recognition that there's room for improvement.
And what's really cool is Andy has ideas that I don't have. I didn't have those ideas. So our guitars have an opportunity to change yet again.
Yeah.
But because it's built on a legacy of doing our work well and striving forward to do something more, make a better thing, ever better thing, a more reliable thing, a more serviceable thing, a more musical thing. Well, the fashion might change a little bit. Even taste and sounds change from generation to generation. But there's something that's inherently good here that was built to begin with. The way Bob used to describe it was, well, there's a roof that doesn't leak and a foundation that won't crumble. Let's keep building the house up. Go, okay, great. We're going to do that. And while we're at it, we're going to make an addition. We're going to raise the roof a little. You just keep expanding and pushing to go, well, there's something here. Because we don't start from scratch. We're like living in the era that we do, where we do, we don't have to start from scratch. There's a road that goes to the building that we occupy. There's power available for us. There's electricity. There's a mail service that can bring letters to.
I learned that in Cameroon. The difference between starting with nothing and starting with nothing.
Yeah.
We don't start with nothing, but we get to continue building on what we have. And so, like some of the things that we've talked about earlier, a lot of those ideas, I build them in my home shop initially. And I go, okay, this is like a nice quiet place. I'm free to choose. Some of those ideas I've been working on those for years. And you keep chipping away at this thing, go, okay, great. Now it's done. would I start a company to be able to build that thing? Yeah, but that would be a lot harder than coming down here and working with our amazing group of engineers, machinists, production crew. Go, hey, look, we've got this thing that we want to build. This is going to be a great instrument. Guess what? We already have tools. We've got a building. We've got a warehouse full of wood. We've got ability. Let's start building this thing. Mm-hmm. That's a lot different picture than going, okay, let's start from the ground up.
Yeah, I built a factory filled with craftspeople who care, and we'll say yes. Oh, you want us to figure out how to make that?
We'll figure it out.
It's hard, but give it to us, we'll do it. And I admire factories that are like that. I'll tell you something else I admire. Bill Collings, one of my best friends, passed away a few years ago, but he left behind craftsmen that really, really care. And they're carrying that on and doing really, really, really fine work. I mean, that's so admirable to me, and that's what I always wanted to build. And Andy, he could think about every nuance of the guitar and how it's going to come together as a cohesive thing. One time, I remember Wood and Steel, and I think more of guitar building really in a factory sense. And Andy came from a workbench place. This experience was there. And I remember one Wood and Steel question, Bob, how would you compare your guitar building to Andy's? I go, well, two ways, pretty easy. One, I have to trial and error something to see if it works. And Andy can hear it in his mind and make it, and it will sound the way he wants it to sound. That's one. And then the other is Andy put in his, the proverbial 10,000 hours. Andy put in his 10,000 hours learning to use a chisel. And I put in my 10,000 hours learning how to eliminate a chisel, And when you put both of us together, it's great because he can go home to his shop and make that guitar that we then come here.
I bring it back here and we sit around the table and go, okay, so guys, here's how we're going to do this, I think. How are we going to, here's what the part should be. How are we going to make it so?
Yeah.
Let's make it. Let's
Well, you could see that we're geeks. And we like doing this. It's still about, for me and Andy, it's still about guitars. Yeah, we're in the business of being in business.
Yeah.
Because if we weren't, we'd have to quit making guitars.
I think one of the things that's fascinating, though, if we're talking about 50 years in legacy, you wrote in your book how early on in the business, you and Kurt weren't making any money. Oh, no. and you kept it going. And you were just talking about how generations before us lay groundwork that we then benefit from. So I don't know if you remember, the first time you and I met in person was at an AM show. And you had just talked about, Andy is going to be, heir successor of this. And I said to you, it was it's a generous thing that we don't usually see in current generations right now, to say, this is the generation we're handing things over to. Mm-hmm. And so I found that to be incredibly impressive. But it seems, based upon everything we've been talking about.
That's my pragmatic side, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to die. I am.
We all are, yeah.
And somebody's got to take over. And so we're going to pick a really good one. And I accept that. I'm not going to fight it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and make it grow.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and nourish it.
And so I think the real legacy, because we can get caught up in like models and features and stuff, is that foundation.
Well, I like to think in concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more than even philosophies. There's a philosophical side to things. But I love to take a concept. You put out a concept to people and it's like, okay, can you put an action to that concept? Can that concept help drive some change, help drive some new thought, help drive a new way to go about doing something? Because conceptually, this is a good concept. And Andy probably knows, if he watches me, Andy wasn't here when it was me in charge. Andy was here when it was quickly moving to him being in charge, right? But for the most part, just conceptually, we need to do this. I can see my future, it's right there. We need to go that direction. Well, what's the ROI? Well, I don't know, but that's the future. And there's some concepts along the way, and then we have to put some actions and some plans to that whole thing. And I think we got to good guitars that way, that people can actually go buy any day of the week. Another concept, we can't be exclusive and popular at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We can be really, really good and popular at the same time. But exclusivity means you're not serving very many people because
Right.
it's exclusive,
Yeah.
right?
Right, there's a lot of things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think whether it's a thing, whether like a guitar, an individual guitar, yeah, there's plenty of concepts that you can turn into actions and yield a guitar by the time you're done with it. Or you could take something like the concept of a business, a company. What even is that? Well, it becomes an entity. It becomes this thriving, living organism that's actually a lot of different parts. But that's little more than a concept, that you turn into daily actions. Before
If
you
there
know
is-
it,
if there's
there's
anything
an
that's
address that you
faith-based,
drove to.
It's the idea of a company.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think it's interesting that so much of what we do is generated as thought first. Let me turn that into something. How do I respond to that? I'm going to turn it into an action. Okay, well, that leads to smaller and smaller, more granular level decisions all throughout the thing to go, as long as we can stay going the same direction, that'll get us there.
What's great about Andy is that on Fridays he's in his shop making that guitar that he's trying to make every last little detail of it. And he's thinking about it and making parts. He's good at time management because he literally does the CEO president job. Then he goes out and plays and adjusts the Powers electric guitar and bends the sides for a new acoustic he's thinking about. Then he goes back in and does that. That's
I
a
like
lot
wearing
of
hats.
So, Andy, would you say when I have a similar version of this question for you. You have the idea, you make it yourself, then you bring it to the team, you figure out how to produce it, and then you see it arrive in the world. Which part of that is the most fulfilling to you?
I don't think there is one part that is the most fulfilling. I love it all.
Yeah.
I really love seeing one in the hands of a player that went into a shop and bought one. Because what that meant was that through determination, hard work, ability, the talents of an entire team of people actually had to be in motion in order to make that happen. I love to build a guitar myself. Put strings on it, pick it up and play it and go, wow, that's awesome. That's an incredible experience. But I think it's better when I can see a musician playing a thing go, wow, so that meant that you went into a shop and bought that guitar because that was the right one for your music. What did it take for that guitar to be in your shop? That meant that it had to get sent there. It had to be set up before it was put into a case. The case had to be made. The box had to be made. That meant we had to finish the guitar. We had to sand the guitar. We had to bind the guitar. We had to assemble it. You could work all your way back to go, we built tools for it. We built every little bit for that thing to exist. Well, that means that a musician could go into a store, find that thing, go, I can go be creative with this thing. To me, that's an incredibly fulfilling experience to know that the talents and effort of so many people were aligned in that one effort. I think that's an incredible thing to be part of.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about how much goes into it, and then we get it in our store, and all the guys at the store are excited about it, learn about it, everybody plays it, and then that first person that comes in is like, what is that? And then we get to talk about it, and they fall in love.
And maybe it's their
pretty
forever guitar.
It might
It's
be.
the thing they play for the next 24 years.
So, Bob, on top of that, you can also say it's all fulfilling. Because I know it's all good. But taking into account also over the last 50 years, the sustainability aspect of the company and the excellence in manufacturing and all that, the advancements that y'all have made here, is there a certain thing that sticks out to you as kind of what you get most amped about right now?
My earliest goal, after I made my first, maybe my 12th or 15th guitar, and realized that I was going to be almost homeless if I continued this, right? My first goal was to make guitar building be a respectable thing that a person could do and earn a living to do it. That I felt it was a good enough pursuit that it deserved to be a vehicle by which someone could have a career. And so a lot of what I did throughout my whole tenure of running guitars was trying to make guitar building a real life job with a real life career. And we have people here that do that. That's what I'm the most proud of. I'm not saying I'm not proud of my guitars. I'm saying that's what I'm the most proud of. Not only that, there's UPS trucks that only serve Taylor guitars. That job is a Taylor guitar job. There are vendors that supply Taylor guitars, and it's half of their company, all of their company, and they're making their living. And there's stores that sell our guitars, and they pay their rent and they pay their employees with it. And then there's people who use that guitar, and often they might earn a living with it, but more often than not, they're enjoying it, soothed by it, playing music, which is so important. But to me, to be able to take something that seemed so hopeless when I started at 19 years old, in 1974, when you could only buy one book on how to build a guitar, and there was no video, and there was no place to do it. Roberto Venn's School of Lutherie existed back then, and maybe Red Wing did, but I get the most gratification from that. And the work that I do environmentally fits in that same category. It's like, could Taylor guitars make the world a better place for very specific people that are involved with Taylor guitars?
Yeah.
And to me, I've used the guitar as my Excalibur to do that. That's what I love, more than anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the legacy right there.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on 50 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To 50 more.
Absolutely.
50 more.
We got
Thank
50
y'all.
more in us.
Let's do it.
Thank y'all very much for having us.
Yes, thank you.